Hey everybody, like Nikki said, my name is Kasandrea Sereno. I am an academic advisor at the University of South Florida, is my day job, and I am really excited to share with you, it's actually not my presentation, it's actually Dr. Keith Warburg's presentation from Valdosta State, and he is absolutely fantastic. Really excited to get to share this presentation with you, all about Generation Z. And so what does that mean? Who are these kids, and what do we need to know about them in our role in higher ed? And as marketers, how can we really appeal to this generation, right? So like I said, I am not Keith, but this is Dr. Keith Warburg. He is at Valdosta State, and this is his presentation, and he's graciously allowed me to present it for you guys today. So let's get started. We're going to cover who is Generation Z, what does Generation Z look like, how is Gen Z different, 6 lessons and a couple of takeaways, and then we'll do questions at the end if that is okay with you guys. Okay, so Generation Z, who actually constitutes Generation Z? So if we're looking at a review of the generation timeline, so you've got your baby boomers, right? That's post-World War II, 1945 to 1965. Generation X and the millennials, kind of in between there. And then Generation Z, roughly pegged at 1996, right around 2000, sort of, they were born right at the beginning of the millennium, and they are now coming to college. We're seeing the first few waves of those come through. And so this generation is different, right? These are not just millennial light. They are a generation all into themselves, and they are different in ways that maybe we weren't necessarily expecting. So we're going to kick it off with a joke here. So I want to share this with you guys.
Millennials, when we say that word, is people younger than us, and we don't like you. Full stop. That's it. That's the entire statement. Fellow older folk, am I telling the truth? Oh, yeah. Yeah, you hear that bitter clap? Yes. 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 You wonder why we give you the stink eye when you complain when the Wi-Fi goes down. You're like, I can't stream Spotify. I made a new playlist. Do you know how we used to make a playlist? Play, record, and pause on the Ghetto Blaster.
So if you get a chance to follow the rest of that.
Is that Velvet Poison? I think it is.
So if you get a chance to watch the rest of that, right, we're used to all of the jokes that everyone has made about millennials, right? That they're coddled, that they can't do anything about their parents. And so there was a lot of dogging on millennials that we can see in marketing and in kind of the general consensus over the last few years. But Generation Z is different, and they're coming behind, and they refuse to be labeled like millennials. So looking at this generation, they are a rising population. Different IDs peg them at somewhere between 25 and 40% of the global population is going to be a Gen Z in 1 to 5 years, right? So looking at different demographic changes, nobody really knows exactly where that's going to peg, but they're a significant population, and they are different. They are also more likely to be the best educated generation ever. So they are coming of age at a time when education is a primary. We're seeing a lot more high school educated students, more college educated, and then on to graduate work. And they have seen a lot in their very few years, right? The war on terror, you might hear a Gen Z person also described as the post-terror generation. Global recessions, mobile devices, always having internet in their pocket. The world has changed very drastically in the last 20 years, and this is what they are growing up with. This is their normal. What they haven't seen, these students have no functional memory of 9/11. So for myself as an older millennial, I was born in 82. That was a seminal moment for me, kind of where our parents' generations might be able to tell you where they were when JFK was shot. Gen Z students don't have this frame of reference. They've never known Mars without a robot on it. They've never seen Alex Trebek with a mustache, and they don't know the original cell phones, right? The terror that was using T9 to text, not something that they're familiar with. So what does Gen Z actually look like? So this is some research from Corey C. Miller and a good friend of mine, Megan Grace, from their book, Generation Z Goes to College. And if you haven't gotten a chance to read it, it's also in its second edition now. Definitely recommend you pick it up. It's got a lot of great insights and some unexpected things in there about this generation. But Generation Z would describe themselves as being influential, thoughtful, loyal, very open-minded, very responsible. They have been repeatedly told that they need to be entrepreneurial in their mindset, and they are comfortable operating within that area. They name education, employment, and racial equality as some of their greatest concerns, more so than immigration, climate change, issues that they believe are receiving nationwide attention that they deserve. They're very interested in that. They are often disengaged from political participation and may take little interest in running for public office because they see the system as broken and they don't want to participate. They just see it as not useful, waste of their time, that they don't want to necessarily spend the time in that. They're also very career minded, right? These are students who the adults around them lost their jobs during the recession. They saw their family potentially, their home being foreclosed on. So they are very intimately aware of troubles and traumas that happen with people that they have a frame of reference for, not just in their community, but things that happen on the other side of the world. They're very cognizant of those things. That being said, they are willing to take personal risks if they believe there's something to be gained. And so they're using this thoughtful worldview to inform the lens and how they want to bring their world of work and what sort of impact they want to make on the world. These are students who are motivated by a desire to help, and they want to work on behalf of something that they deeply are invested in, that they believe in. So we saw this a little bit with some of the millennial generational research. Gen Z is taking it up a notch. If they're going to be involved in something, they want it to be meaningful to them. So how is Gen Z different? These students here, the economy and debt and financial security, super, super important to them. The idea of community, multitasking, charitable habits. Let's discuss these a little bit more. So, yes. So charitable habits. So students will say, so these young people of the Gen Z mindset would want to save their money rather than spend it. They are more willing to donate their own money. They are more interested, they are more willing to potentially volunteer for an organization that they're interested in. They would say that they would search for a job in volunteering, and even 10% say they want to start their own nonprofit. They are very interested in this idea of working for the common good. That is something that's very important to them. So in this idea of values and priority, right? Because they grew up during the financial crisis and seeing the burden of student loans from their parents, they are very price conscious shoppers. They are filtering their online news and shopping. It's all very natural to them, and sort of this mass consumption of data is normal. About 66% of Gen Z students say that their top concern is college debt. And so because of this, they plan to research and compare costs using a tool that's newest and dearest to their heart, right? The internet. They're going to look for opportunities to mitigate this. They're also interested in security. So these might be students who come to you and are very conscious about the jobs that they're going to get after graduation. They're very interested in making sure that there's going to be some security for the risk in the investment that they're making here in college. Some assumptions about them that they assume is that online privacy doesn't really exist, and they're comfortable working within those parameters. So people of my generation, older millennials, Generation X, Generation Z, sometimes might come to the online space with a very strong interest in maintaining privacy and personal boundaries and connections. Generation Z doesn't really operate with that. The idea that screen time is an issue isn't really one for them, because screens are so embedded in their daily activity and their day-to-day life. So they might be using their television and watching a show, but also on their phone or using an app at the same time. The idea that they would have multiple screens in front of them at any given point is just normal and natural in ways that are different from the way that we as older people might necessarily look at those. And while they do embrace some of the traits of things that they've grown up hearing about millennials, they would reject those such as narcissism, laziness, codependence. They would very firmly tell you that they are not millennials. They are their own generation with their own ideas. Okay. Within that, yes. Okay, so some communication preferences. What are we looking at? How does Gen Z want to communicate? Gen Z doesn't really distinguish this concept between what happens online and what happens in real life. For them, it is all real life. If it happens online, if it happens in real life, in their personal day-to-day, that's all one sort of homogeneous atmosphere. They're used to boundaries going back and forth with that. Facebook is out, Instagram is in, which makes sense if you think about it. This is the generation who got a Facebook perhaps when they were in middle school, right? So Facebook's been around since 2005. It's been open to the public since 2007. So they probably got their Facebook when they were in middle school, and it was probably largely watched over by their parents, and their first friends were mom and dad and grandma and grandpa. Well, now that they're 18, 19, 22, 23, their friends are still mom and dad and grandma and grandpa. And so they don't use Facebook the way that an older millennial would use Facebook, where we would use our timeline and post things for our friends to share. They're seeking sort of that more private atmosphere, connection with peers. And so Instagram is really where it is for them. They are looking to social media for their news over cable news, print news. They're going to go and see what it is on the web. Things that are sort of crowdsourced as far as information, that's what they're going to, that's what they're seeing as their source of the daily news. Whereas people of my generation, my parents' generation, they waited till the 10 o'clock nightly news, and what the news anchor said was kind of gospel. That's not really how it is for this generation. They want personalization, which makes sense. Everybody now has the opportunity to jump on Amazon and it knows exactly what you want, right? Netflix suggests shows based on your viewing style. Everything is personalized, right? You're going to get served ads on Facebook based on what you've searched for in Google. And this is completely normal and acceptable to Generation Z. Their customized Spotify playlist, targeted social media ads, they would push back on anything that's a one size fits all, because they expect in every other aspect of their life for their content to be customized to them, and that's natural and normal. Whereas older generations might be a little creeped out by seeing ads on Facebook for something you just searched on in Google. For Generation Z, that's normal, and that's how the internet should work, because it's more efficient for what they're looking for. So they want it to be personalized. Video is important, but it's not everything. We've seen this for a few years. Yes, video content being pushed out. It was visually oriented with Instagram and YouTube, but access to video devices and software on phones has made it exponentially easier. Creation, consumption, just a lot easier. And Generation Z is very okay with live streaming, broadcasting, seeing what the day-to-day life is like for their peers. They're totally okay with that. That's normal, that's average, that is something that they're okay with. So how can we take these into lessons for us, right? So now that we know a little bit more about Gen Z, how can we use this to tailor our work? First, they are people. Stop treating them like kids. They are adults. They have plenty in common with you. Definitely don't hijack their trends or slang. There's no faster way than to alienate a Gen Z by trying to appropriate their language or their culture. They really don't like it. It does not hit very well. And sometimes those old methods, they're still the best, right? Think about the idea that good relationship building is key. These are kids who, yes, they have technology mediated conversations, but they are very deeply interested in the human relationship. It may be a human relationship that with a person that they've never necessarily met in person, but the human relationship is still incredibly key to this generation. Lesson number 2, get to the point. You've got a very short amount of time to make that impression, about 8 seconds for a video. Make sure that your content is customized or at least incredibly well targeted. Most brands do not necessarily do this very well. And the days of just throwing up a commercial out there and blasting it to the masses, you're just going to throw money into the void for that. Generation Z expects things to be customized. They expect for things to reach them that make sense to them. And if it doesn't resonate quickly, they're just going to move on by it. Visual communication is key, so spending time to make sure that the audio, the sound, the visual that you're using is eye-catching and engaging. Most people will not necessarily suffer through poor video, shaky cameras, that sort of thing. The technology has really evolved to make this much more simple for content creators, and so why are we not taking advantage of it? If you're going to use memes, emojis, and GIFs, you got to do it well and you got to do it appropriately. So meme culture is its own field of study in and of itself, and nothing looks more out of touch than using something in a context in which it was not necessarily designed. It becomes glaringly obvious and you lose credibility with this generation. Lesson number 3, ask for the right thing, right? So this generation, their spending and purchasing is much more impulsive than previous generations. Makes sense, right? So if they're on a platform, they're getting served ads that are very narrowly targeted towards them. And we've also made it incredibly easy to make that purchase decision. 2 or 3 clicks away from the ad, it's purchased, it's being mailed to your house. This is normal for Gen Z, right? So this idea of the do it now mentality, they do resonate well to limited time, online only opportunities that reduce the option for comparison shopping. This is normal to the Gen Z demographic. So for example, whereas someone maybe who a millennial or a Generation X is going to jump online to look for something and spend days or weeks researching, reading reviews, culling through the options, Generation Z doesn't really have time for that. They want to make a decision, find exactly what they need because the ads are targeted and served directly to them, and then they're going to make that purchasing decision and move on to the next thing. Small impulsive asks versus long development large asks. What we're saying by that is it's a little bit easier to get someone to like a profile picture or make a comment versus follow us and then make a comment and share this and tag 2 of your best friends. If it has more than 3 steps, it's cooking, we're not going to do it. So that is what this Gen Z is looking at. If you're going to offer a reward program, you need to have sort of the low accrual redemptions, right? So back in the day, you used to have the sandwich card for your deli, and if you got 10 punches, you got a free sandwich. Generation Z moves too quickly for that. Who knows if they're going to be back at that sandwich place 9 more times to accrue their free sandwich, right? So programs such as Starbucks, right? You can see the stars in your app. They accrue very quickly. You can change what you're going to get as your free perk based on your accruals, and you can accrue them much faster. So this is something that is normal and expected from the Gen Z population. Seeking and offering alignment, what we mean with that is get a clear understanding of what value means to your Gen Z audience and then align with it, right? So the right voice with the right brand and being careful not to jump onto a trend or a trending topic if it doesn't necessarily align with your brand. And then being willing to walk the walk in addition to just talking the talk. Gen Z suffers no fools when it comes to companies not doing what they say they're going to do, not acting in ethical manners. Gen Z cancel culture is a thing, right? And so they want to know that the alignment in what they value is also mirrored in the brands that they're working with. Rather than just asking a Gen Z person for a straight ask, think about offering experiences, right? So the experience of shopping in a particular store, what is the value add for that Gen Z person? And so the option to offer an experience rather than just another tick box, something that they're very, very interested in. Good so far. Okay, so being real. Investing in your company's authentic user-generated content, right? So the saying in marketing is your brand is not what you say it is, it's what your customers say it is. That is exactly Gen Z. They want to see perceived, authentic user-generated content. You don't need glossy TV quality, multi-camera angle videos in your social. Things that are presented and curated by a student, maybe on an iPhone, works just as well. And honestly, it's received better by the Gen Z population. Gen Z customers prefer to see real people in their advertisements. So you might have noticed in a Target advertisement, you're seeing a wider variety in the look and the feel and the aesthetic of the models they're using. Gen Z wants to see real people in advertisement. Content, if you're going to produce it, it needs to be transparent. It needs to be authentic, right? Gen Z doesn't suffer fools in this. And then celebrate your advocates. So one of the most effective ways to drive that advocacy is to create meaningful, social, share-worthy opportunities that elevate the status of those who you are looking to engage. So what do we mean by that? Influencers, right? Gen Z, many students are saying they want to be an influencer when they grow up. This is sort of where that is coming from. So engaging with your customers and then shouting them out. Showing that user-generated content, being real with your audience and going back and forth with them. Does that make sense? Okay. Show, don't tell, right? This is marketing 101. Providing, say, a 360-degree view and current image of your campus. Offer more options, right? They're looking for this content that's out there. Don't just have it on one channel. It makes them very upset, right? They want to be able to go in and get the information that they need. So don't be afraid to offer those reference points and hundreds of them, reviews, photos, videos. They expect that they should be able to find this information from brands, and colleges and universities are no different. Don't be afraid to tell your story. Gen Z is very story motivated and story driven. They believe deeply in their own story, and they want to hear the story of the brands, the companies, and the schools that they're interested in, because they're trying to figure out, do they belong there, right? The relationship is key to this generation. So what are some takeaways? Take the time to know your audience. Try not to try too hard. And at the end of the day, think about it all coming down to relationships. Are you offering a true value in this relationship with the Gen Z person as your client, as your prospective student, as someone that you want to work with? Any questions? I know we kind of just running up against time, but wanted to take some time here for questions. And if you guys have anything, I'd love to hear from you.